It's also for me thinking of like what happens between the scenes that I'm not writing that I want the reader to
Ah.
know.
Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan,
And I'm Eric Mertz.
and it is episode 175 of the podcast. Can you believe that? I love that we're
It's a
triple
crazy number.
digits, Yeah, it's awesome.
It's a big number.
And it is January 8th, 2025, as we record this. Today, we're talking about problem solving in your novel and your life, in parentheses.
They're not different. They're the same.
Really not, it's life
They're
and life.
variances. Yeah.
Thanks for all the existing patrons for believing in our work offline and here in the podcast. You can become a patron of the arts at patreon.com/Valerie Isan, IHSAN, for books, writing instruction, coaching, and planning. And you can go to patreon.com/Strange Air Stories for short stories in the paranormal mystery genre. Hello, Eric. It's been a
Hi.
couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the thing where I said, I saw you last year. I'm not going to
Yeah.
do that thing. But it's been a while. Yeah. It feels like a while.
Yeah. What have you been doing?
Writing.
Writing.
Writing. Yeah. I have had I was finishing things in 2024 and now I'm finishing more. I've got some manuscripts that are been sitting on the pile for a while that I'm actively working to finish. And so I should be flooding my mailing list with like release dates and cover reveals and things for a while, which is it's great to have relevant content that people like
Hmm.
and new material to put out there. So yeah, it's like a lot of that client work has been insanely busy. It's been like normally the flood. I expected the flood to start on the 6th, which is kind of the informal first day of the year, but I was getting hammered by clients new and old starting on the 26th of December, like the day after Christmas. People were like, "Let's go," So it was a little bit of I just expected to have a quieter client life, but it's been quite a balance. So,
So
what about you?
balancing work and work.
Well, just the expectation of I think it has been my pattern that basically like there's no new inquiries for clients starting, basically the end of November, I kind of like Thanksgiving to the first Monday of the new year. It's finishing up stuff or putting things into kind of in a pause because people go into a pause. And that just wasn't the case. There was a lot of like
Hmm.
new inquiry. There was a lot of and not all of it like major, but like enough that it required my attention.
Hmm.
So just when I was expecting to like, I'm going to finish these things for these clients and
I see.
I'm not going to, but onboarding people takes time.
Yeah.
I've done the math. It's like probably 45 minutes. Every serious inquiry is about 45 minutes. So two or three of those a week, you've now taken a, pretty big bite of your time.
Hmm.
Um, there was quite a few. Yeah. So
All right.
that's been the last few weeks for me. What about you?
I have started. I wonder how often I say this on the podcast.
I have a track. I have a Val tracker over here. Let me just go for it.
So I'm in the headspace of decluttering.
Oh
I
boy,
know,
this
I
is
know that. So the
11.
reason why, though,
You
number
said it in
11.
episode 163, 151,
This
143.
time it has a new kind of nuance to it though,
Okay, you
because
said
now
that in 161, 153. Just kidding.
I did some journaling and some like reality checking. Sometimes my
I
friends
like
call this the
I
come to
should do
Jesus
that.
moment, like, oh, okay. So if I really do want to move to a new country by the end of this year,
Okay.
I have, like 11 months. And in that time, I need to do all the paperwork and the lawyer stuff, but also more important, like get rid of half of my things, figure out where I'm going to put the other half, like shipping or storage or whatever, and like get this house ready to rent it to someone else. So that's going to take a while.
That's a
And
full-time job in itself right there.
right? And I have a full-time job right now, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to build a business so that I have income in the new country.
So
So
you're going to sleep in 2026. You're going to
no,
eat in
actually, my
2026.
word for the year is nurture, and
Oh no, I don't.
I'm not sure how the
Ah.
two could coexist, but we're gonna see. So what I'm doing, excuse me, this is the first time I'm talking this morning. So what I'm gonna do is basically go room by room
Mm,
and completely complete it. You know, like, okay, I'm starting in this room. You notice maybe this armoire is cockeyed a little bit. I emptied it out last night. I'm going to move it to another room, like a staging room or whatever. I took a bunch of pictures, inside it out, and I'm going to sell it. I'm not bringing it to Costa Rica, so why is it in my office right now? So I'm going to, do
because
that.
it's
I've got
nice.
the closet doors here are kind of they never worked right after we had the floors installed. So, when the workers like took the
Yeah,
closet doors down and put them back up, they've never worked since. So I've got to figure out like why they don't work and get a new little, I don't know,
yeah.
call the handyman, something. So stuff like that. Like, I don't think I need to paint in here, but
Valeri, you could call Valeri. He's our
Valeri?
handyman. I was saying
Oh,
you need a
okay.
number. He'll
I
come.
have a handyman. Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
how much longer he wants to be our handyman. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing is like really decluttering, like
But you've
room
also
by
got to do some
room.
writing. You've also got to do some client work.
I do, yeah. And
Keep
I've got a
that
client
bookstore
job that
habit.
I'm doing today, so
I'm
yeah,
not putting pressure on you, girl.
no,
You're
I
just here
know.
to
And
remind you.
actually, I did think too about, every time because I'm working full time at the bookstore temporarily to help out the owner who needs to find a new full time person because the other full time person quit like the month before Christmas. So he was thrown into this huge panic. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to manage this. So I jumped in and said, okay, I'll help.
I'm just going to editorialize. I think the owner should help you out by getting that new person in sooner than later because if, I don't know. I want to see you move. So,
Yeah, and I will. And that's all going to happen in the time it's meant to happen. But I guess you were talking about writing. And so I was thinking about like
oh yeah.
writing goals and how to fit this all in and because I'm working full time and trying to like do client work, all of a sudden I have like no time off. And that creates a lot of feelings and limiting beliefs that pop up like, if I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
writing, am I really a writer? And, all of that head junk that goes on and trying to, kick that off. Like, yes, I'm a writer. And even if I'm not writing right in this next 3 months, while I'm working full time, that still means I'm a writer. But I do have, like you said, I have like four started manuscripts in Scrivener that are in various stages of being done. And there's one that's completely done. It just needs to be formatted. And I've been sitting on it for like over a year. So like I have stuff I could be publishing too. So those kinds of things are in my head as well. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
my author update. I'm trying to get my office ready for before I move on to the bathroom is right behind this wall. So that's the next room probably I'll go to. I'm just going to go around the house room by
Room by
room
room.
and stay in the room. And, my hope is that I can finish a room a month and, or one or two, like some rooms are, like the hallway. I think I could probably do.
Ending with the kitchen, probably. I mean, you don't want to
But I'm
kitchen
also
last.
including like the outside spaces too, because those need to
Yeah.
be ready
Yep.
for renters as well. But
Yep.
anyway,
Yep.
that
Well, if you
is
need
what
a
I'm
tip,
doing.
any tips there, I rented out. I vacated a home. I rented it out. I did that whole shebang for years. We can do a sub podcast for anybody here
Sub
who wants to
podcast, yeah, I had
talk about
a
that.
house rental for many years too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what are you reading?
I'm reading two books. I'm reading The Air Affair by Jasper Ford.
Oh, I have
Um,
that. I haven't read it yet. Is it good?
It's not okay.
It
Here's the
seems
thing. Like,
weird to me, but that's kind of
I
why I set it aside for myself.
I don't love humor in writing. Like, I like humor in TV. It's always hard for me because I'm like very analytical when I'm reading, and I'm like, I do the whole "Why is this funny? Why is
Mm,
this funny?" Um, I put myself in the writer's shoes too much when I read
mm.
to really ever get anything out of humor. Terry Pratchett has broke me in that because Terry Pratchett, like, he's not trying to be funny. He just is funny.
Right. And it
It
catches you by
is,
surprise, maybe.
yeah. Or it's just like, this is funny. I think there's a difference between trying to be funny and just being funny. Like, there's the truly funny people don't try. And I don't think Terry Pratchett ever tried to be funny. I think he just wrote funny things
Hmm.
because he was a funny person, and it just was. And Jasper Ford's the same way. It's it's a cool little mystery. I will continue to read the series because it's a well written series. It has a very kind of just BBC mystery feel.
Hmm.
The humor is very cheeky. It's all literary jokes. I mean, it's like time machine literary jokes. It's you can get a little bit of a laugh, like,
Hmm.
about that kind of stuff. It's always like the new Charles Dickens novel has gone missing, and and it's not a book he ever wrote. So it's funny in that way.
Okay.
Um, there's like a convention where everybody's named John Milton, but nobody's ever read Paradise Lost. So it's like this joke about, like, no, so there's these. It's like the English major in me gets to laugh at myself for wasting 4 years on that degree. Um, and then I'm also listening to the Boy from the Woods, the Harlan Coben book.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, that one's interesting. The reader's really good, and Harlan Coben just writes some pretty straightforward stuff. And I
Hmm.
needed something straightforward for my dog walks because when you walk a puppy, you can't, you
Focus
know,
too
you can't
much.
you can't focus too much if you're on dog. So
I'm glad you mentioned the audiobook because I have an audiobook and I forget sometimes that that's a book I'm reading because I
right.
don't do it very often.
Neither do I, but
Um,
new year, new things. I'm
yeah, so I am reading I'm still reading a couple of books from last year, several actually, because you know me. But
yeah.
I had two library books jump the stack, one right after the other. So I just finished one library book last week. That was called, oh, I totally forgot what it was. It was called, oh, The Story Collector by Evie Wood. That
Okay.
was good. And then the one I'm reading right now, library book is called Once There Were Wolves. Um, and that's a little, it's not gritty, but kind of, it's interesting because she is a biologist, so she's watching wolves and she's got a twin sister and there's this like kind of mystery and a dead body and doesn't know who killed the person and the police she thinks is going to want to blame it on the wolves they just reintroduced and.
Right.
So anyway, it's pretty interesting, but there have been moments where I thought, wow, this is really heavy. So
Yeah.
that is happening. I'm also listening to The Teller of Small Fortunes, which is kind of a low, what do they call that? The low stakes fantasy. Kind of
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
the Monk and Robot series by Becky
Yeah.
Chambers. It's just,
Yeah.
she's a little fortune teller that moves through the country, and there's a little band of people that have started following her, and um, they're trying to find somebody's missing daughter, so it's kind of like slow and anyway, so that's
Meandering.
meandering. Yeah. So those are the two that I'm actively in right now, and also the ones that I had to stop because these are library books. So
As a
that's
side note, just I'm going to editorialize, like, the whole low stakes fantasy thing is so funny to me because there was about 10 years ago where I just stopped reading fantasy because it's like I cannot read another book where the entire world is in danger, and if one wizard doesn't stop another wizard, then the whole world's going to split in half. It's like, I get that you're trying to create stakes in your story, but you, like, the Marvel movies are the same way. It's like the world's going to end, great. That was the last movie and the last movie and the last movie. Give me
Right.
something different.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's funny that it's gone the other way where it's like this whole book is about getting a cup of tea. Let's just go for a walk.
But it works.
Yay!
Sometimes you just need
It does.
that.
It totally does.
That's
Well,
why
I
I
as
go
I
and rewatch Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility frequently because I just need to sit down with a cup of tea.
right, right. Well, I think I said it on this podcast last summer. Like I had delivering my kid across town to a theater camp, and it was going to be this grueling drive, and so I picked those
Oh,
Travis
yeah.
Baldry books from because
Yeah.
I needed something that was not going to stress me out, that was going to
That's
chill me
totally
out.
the right kind of thing
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Like there is a place for everything. That's why
Hmm.
the books are popular.
Yeah. All right. Next segment, tips,
I
tidbits,
got one. I've got
resources.
one.
You got one?
I said I
Okay.
didn't have one, but I've got one.
Yeah. What's
So
that?
you go first, though.
Oh,
You go
I have
first.
two this time. Okay. So I'll do one, then you
Ooh.
do one, and then I'll do another one.
Right, right, right.
All right. So I don't know if you've heard about the Wheel of Life.
Nope.
Okay. It's just it's a kind of a counseling tip or tool or whatever. It's just this wheel with categories all around it. So the categories are friends and family,
Okay.
significant other,
Okay.
personal growth, fun and leisure, home environment, career, money, health. So you've got this wheel and it's kind of like the spokes come together in the center. So the idea is that you kind of rank your categories in your life in each of those categories, 1 to 10. Like how well do you think you're doing in fun and leisure? Do you have enough fun and leisure in your life and where would you rank yourself in that? And then you kind of like connect the dots and so you can see like does this look like a spider web or is it all janky? Is this a wheel that could actually spin or is it, going to be all clunky? So it just helps you understand what areas in your life need improvement, what areas you might be neglecting, so that you can start creating balance in your life. Like, what do you want to work on next? And, what needs to happen for that number to increase? And so it's all just a personal, and it is personal. Like, if you have a lower number in one category, maybe that's because that category doesn't, like you don't have it in your life on purpose, whatever. You're
Right.
perfectly fine with it. Or maybe that number is high. Like the example in the book was like for significant other. If a person is single and they've put like 9 in significant other, it's because they're happy being single and they don't need, they are their significant other. They are fine with it. So that wouldn't be like an area to work on because you don't have a because you're single. It just really depends on you and your definitions of success in all of these areas. And anyway, I just kind of go back to that if you're feeling kind of like, I don't, if you're kind of feeling meh or like restless or you're not really quite sure what's going on and you're just feeling kind of weird, sometimes just doing like a little quick check in on the wheel of life is a good way to see, oh, actually, I am not allowing myself to have any fun or whatever. So that's one tidbit.
Interesting. Mine's super techy, and I'm just gonna say if you are using in your day, not using Otter in your day job,
Oh,
I was just
otter.io.
Otter.io is fabulous. It's a transcription software where you can upload a recording of any kind. You upload it, the audio to it, it'll transcribe it, it'll summarize it. The summary is a little, it's AI. We've talked, I mean, we're going to
Hmm.
trip into that topic in some way in these tidbit things, but this, like, it's just limitless, limitless. I was called on to do something. I didn't know how to do it. Like somebody asked me for something, and I didn't know how to produce it. I thought Otter has to be able to do this, and it does it. Like it's just limitless in what it can do. And for the
Cool.
price, I think it's $60 a year. It's like the most valuable time saver. It is literally cut in half the amount of like translation work that I do, where I interview a
Oh.
client and like I can pull full
How is
quotes.
it on conversations though, like interviews? Like how well would it do like this podcast? Because we don't have transcripts because the transcription services I've used are so wonky that I can't. like the time it would take to edit it out and make it readable, I just don't have. And
So that right there, that transition, when you asked that question, it would have fully picked up speaker one was saying this, now speaker two was saying that. And then when you come in again, it'll pick out speaker number
what
one
if we're
again.
talking on top of
Right
each
there.
other?
Right there. That it would not pick up. That it would have a hard
See?
time picking up.
Yeah.
But what it does is it gives you the transcript. But when you click on the transcript, a word, it'll play the recording. So you can go in and easily, like, okay, so if we just cross-talked,
Hmm.
we can take that segment and then you can create a Word document of that segment, put it over here, and then listen to it. Okay, I said this, and then you cut in with that, and then so you can listen to and correct it in line because the
Hmm.
recording is basically just a layer behind the transcript.
Okay.
Um, so I have a client that's from Kansas. He's got a super, like, he talks a million miles an hour. He's got a deeply Midwest accent. It does a lot of like weird transcription for him. Like there's a word, there's something he says it always puts the word Guinness in there, like Guinness Stout. I don't know why. Um, I have clients that are I've for a book that I've been working on that are from South Asia, so I've got a lot of like, or East and South Asia, so there's a lot of like it struggles with
With
foreign
accents.
dialects and
Okay.
accents. But again, you have the transcript behind the transcript, you have the
So you
audio,
can
so you can
listen to it and be like, okay. So, because sometimes there's those transcriptions where the audio's not there and you have to be like, you have to read it out loud and try to hear what
or you
word
have to
this
play it in
could
one
be.
place and look at it in another, and that doesn't work at all. So
Yeah. All right, cool.
yeah,
Otter.io. I'm gonna have to check
brilliant,
that out.
brilliant, brilliant. It's a showstopper.
So another tidbit I have is, on this personal development kick, I guess they kind of go hand in hand, these two tidbits. So thinking about mental wealth instead of mental health. It is smack dab in the middle of winter here in the Willamette Valley. It's freaking gray and oppressive all the time. We were talking about the happy lights, the sad lights, on our desks. And I sit in front of my happy light every morning with my coffee from like October to May because it's so gray all the time. Um, anyway, so I just almost every book I read now talks about sleep as being the number one thing for overall health, and suggests that you like wake up at the same time every day. And actually, my friend Josh had undiagnosed ADHD for most of his life, and he always actually suffered from weird insomnia bouts all the time. And until he became an adult with the kind of job where he had to show up at the same time every morning, his sleep like kind of regulated for the first time in his, life. So I, set my alarm to wake up, and I'm usually like grumbly about it. And when I don't have to wake up to an alarm, I'm like, woohoo, yay. But if there's like a 2 hour difference in those days, like that's not cool. So I was trying to figure out how to like still get up on time to show up for work and still have time. And how do I regulate that? How do I like homeostasis or whatever? So I'm trying to change the time that I get up for the day job a little bit later. I've been taking that Magic Mind performance shot. I'm still am, and I'm reading a little bit more about their company. They ship internationally, so I'll still be able to get it in Costa Rica, which I was really happy about. And they've got these pillars of mental health: sleep, diet, exercise, stress management, and then this exogenous compounds. I didn't know what that was. I had to look it up. It's like something created outside the body, like antibiotics or sleep supplements or smoke or wildfires or diet or, just stuff that you kind of ingest, but it's created outside the body. Anyways, but so I'm doing a lot of work in all of those pillars already. Like I'm doing the class pass. I've got the spin class I did yesterday. It was so awesome. The stress management, I've started meditating again with that app that I used. I'm trying to work on my portion control on my food and eating more protein, so I feel like I'm already doing everything like in these pillars of health, but the sleep, it's the last
It's a
thing
tough one.
that I usually end up working on, but it's the first thing on all these lists that I'm seeing. So Magic Mind has this new mental wealth challenge that they have on their website, and they've packaged up their little mental performance shots that I'm still having with my coffee and my happy light in the morning. But along with that, they're doing these sleep shots too at the same time. So they like bundled it together, and they've got this like 45% off sale. Anyway, I've got a link in the show notes. So yeah, sleep. I guess that is my tip. My 2025 resolution is to get more sleep. It's kind of weird, but I don't like naps. So it's really important to get like my sleep in order. So yeah, I'm trying to focus on sleep, wake up at the same time ish every morning, even if that means like my morning routine is going to be a little shorter. So that's what I'm trying to do. That's my tip.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel you with naps. I've just decided that when I don't sleep well, like I just don't. Like
Yeah, I don't like
I just don't.
napping. My husband
Yeah.
loves napping. He wants me to come and nap with him, and I'm
I
like,
I love it, but it doesn't. It
uh,
rarely works. Like if I Friday night I had a bad night's sleep, and then I had somewhere to. I was going to go out with some friends on Saturday night, and I was like, no, I'm actually not gonna. Here's what I'm not gonna do. I'm not gonna chase the nap all day on Saturday, get frustrated when it doesn't happen, and then go out and be miserable. I'm actually just not gonna go out. I'm just going to embrace the fact that like I need to refocus on getting sleep Saturday night, and it's like this. I don't know. There becomes the medicine we took when we were 30 doesn't work when we're 50. So I don't think at least. Okay.
yeah.
Let's let's
All
fix
right.
that book.
Oh, yes. So, main topic, problem solving in your novel. So, well, there's so many ways to start talking about this. I
Well, let's just
think,
let's say this. Like let's just baseline. Your book, first draft, probably second draft. Like there are problems with a book. Nobody writes a perfect first draft. Nobody rewrites on their own a perfect second draft, I don't think. I mean, you can probably cut the number of rewrites down as you get better at it, but problems permeate a book for a while. Like and diagnosing them and solving them is a part of finishing a book
mhm,
or a short story, anything.
yes. And there are lots of tools like the story rubric we talked about for a while. It's been a while since we brought up the story rubric, but I still use that for diagnostic purposes to try to find the problems. But if you run into a problem and you're like stuck in a spot where you like know there's something wrong here and you don't know how to get past this, um, I think so. I did this cool exercise at the retreat I did this year on it was on character development, but we talked about like when you're trying to understand your character's motivations, there are different I don't know, tips and tricks on that. And one is like, having a conversation with your character or having your character write you a letter or and so one of those things was also like pulling tarot cards. Like I used to have a game. I can't remember what it was called. Maybe it was called Plot Your Novel. I can't remember, but it was this like game where you would draw a card and that was your writing prompt and you wrote for like 15 minutes or whatever and then you had to like roll this dice and that was gonna and be the like the non sequitur, so then you had to like completely shift and write and so it would kind of like introduce this external thing that made you think, oh, and so like the tarot card was kind of like that. So um
Well,
when you
let's rewind it just a step
oh
there because
sure.
you said something that I think is underappreciated, and that is like you're going through your draft, first draft, second draft, third draft, and you say something's not right here.
Hmm.
Like I think that in therein lies like like maybe the first most important thing is like the first skill is you have to be able to read or I don't know, diagnose your book in a way that uh, attend to your book in a way that those things come clear to you, right? I mean, you can't read your book with blinders that the reader's not going to see those mistakes or those problem spots. That the problem spot is just you being critical. Like if you sense that there's a problem spot and you're reading something, if you're going through your manuscript, like that's not your imaginations. That's not your critic. That's not you being overcritical. That's you actually say like recognizing a problem. And I think a lot of people like because they don't want to do the heavy lifting, like, oh, that's just my imagination. Oh, I'm just tired. Oh, I'm just being
Hmm.
critical. It's like,
That's
nope,
good enough.
nope, 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 nope. Those things are not just,
Hmm.
ignore things to ignore. So seeing those spots is an important like like skill trait as a writer to like, okay, this is a place that I need to do something. You're talking about some of those things that you would do to like work your way through that.
Yeah, and also in developing that skill, there has to be a little bit of emotional maturity too, because, I don't know where I heard this, but I like using the quote in service of the story.
Yeah,
So if something's not working and you're like, oh, but I really like this character, or oh, but this is such a pretty scene, or this passage is great and I want to
my
say it
world
like
building is
this. I love this
brilliant.
sentence. It was so wonderful. I just want this sentence in here. But yeah.
37 pages describing my magic system. It's so brilliant.
In
Maybe not.
service of the story, cut it. Something's not right here. All in service of the story. So yeah. So
Not the author.
yes, correct. Yeah.
I
And
think that's
and
the big
author
mis
intrusion is totally obvious when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who like mistake the in service of the story and the service of the author.
Funny that you should bring that up because one of the things I like using is the GROW method. Do you know about that?
No. Well, I
So
might
GROW
know about
stands
it, but
for
not by the name.
what's that?
I said I might know it, but not by that name.
So GROW stands for goals, resources, obstacles, and the way forward. So if you run into a problem in your novel, you can check in with your character and figure out like, so what's your character's goal in this scene? What is it that he or she or they want to accomplish? And resources. What resources do they have in the story world or in this scene, in this room, whatever? What resources do they have that can help them with this goal? What obstacles are in this scene that are preventing the character from getting what they want? And then what is the way forward for this character? So if your character is stuck, if you, as the writer, are stuck, you can use that grow method to kind of analyze the scene and see what's missing that way for the character, but also for you as the writer. So if you as the writer, what is your goal as the writer in this scene? If you want an emotional response from the reader, or you want to get the character from this point to this point, or whatever your goal is for the author, what are your resources? Well, you could read this book, you could talk to this other writer, you could like there's what resources do you have in your immediate vicinity and also like in your circle of influence that could help you. I remember one time I was so stuck on this one place for like 4 months. I couldn't get this character from this point to this point. And I was asking other writers, what would you do about, it took me interviewing a few writers before I stumbled upon, oh, okay, that's the answer. That's how I can get her out of this stuck spot.
Right.
What are the obstacles for you as the author? Is it because you're writing at the wrong time of day? Is it because you're tired? Is it because the dog's bothering you? Like, are you distracted? Are you whatever? And then what is the way forward? What is the one action step you can take right now that will get you closer to that goal as the writer? So you can look at it both ways, like for the character and for the writer, and they're both like super helpful. So I like the grow method.
Hmm. I'm pondering that
You're
because for
pondering
me,
that.
like, I'm pondering it because I think that, like, really where I go in my head with these conversation is like, I don't know. I really just take the character completely out of the thing, right? I take it out, like when I find problem spots and I'm dealing with I have dealt with them this week because I feel
Mhm.
like it's me that's like it's some sort of it's I don't know. Like I'm the one, I'm sort of in mostly pulling the strings here. Dear character, I'm mostly pulling the strings. Why did I do this? Like, why are we here? And how do I get us out of here? And I know that sounds like, boy, you're putting yourself in like the big chair, but like a lot of the problems that I find in books, it's like, oh, that's because I got lazy here, or that's because I didn't
Mm.
think through the end of a scene. It's usually for me like how scenes dovetail together and how they relate to one another. I think that's kind of like the next level scene craft is like not you created a great scene, but how does it go into the next one? Um, it's like it's like a date versus dating, I've heard somebody say. So it's usually where I feel like I lose sight of that things. I've misled the thing. And I've like, I wrote to the end in my mind, but I didn't like give myself, I don't know. I feel like it's all happening here.
In your
And I
head.
usually will sit, yeah, and I'll usually just sit back from it and say like, why do I consistently, you know, short circuit these things? Or why do I, I have that like that conversation, and that's
So
kind
you're
of
analyzing like your writing process
just
when you run into
yeah,
problems. Hmm.
not my writing process because that's like not well by that I don't mean like that I'm here doing the work. It's more like when I'm writing a scene, it's like my process of like when I start writing a scene, oftentimes the problem is like I know where I want to start and I know where I want to go, but I don't know where it leads. What's the leave behind? Like in a
Like,
like
what's the
what
point of the
happened?
scene?
No, like I'll know like this the point of this is to move this story element forward and it's to move the character forward here. But what I will lose sight of sometimes is but what does it lead like where does it lead to in the next thing, right? Like where does the closing of this scene thematically or energetically lead into the next scene, right? If this scene ends on a speculative note or a cliffhanger note. This is the last scene in the book where we're going to see these characters, and now there's this cliffhanger. Like, where do I start next? Do I start on a point of certainty? Do I start on a
Hmm.
point of resolve? Like,
So are
am
you,
I creating enough of like this instead of a story that moves flat? So I'll know like right now I just finished a scene which is setting up a theme for the next book. It's great, but it didn't work until I figured out that it's ending. Their relationship is satisfying. It's ending on a high note, and now I need to create uncertainty for the character in the next scene to finish out the next plot line, right? Like,
okay.
so it's a scene resolves and it accomplishes what it needs to accomplish, but it also needs to like energetically, thematically fit into the next scene. It's like right, if you ever read a screenplay, sometimes you'll read like an amateur screenplay is good scene, good scene, good scene, good scene. They come out like blocks,
Hmm.
but they need to like feed into each other. Like
So you're talking
this
about
scene
transitions.
transitions and staging of things. Like for
Okay.
me, so I look at that like that's me. That's me like hurriedly writing that scene and not really it's not dating the next scene. It's just gone on a good date. It's
Hmm.
not, it's not in a long-term relationship at the next scene, It's not thinking about breakfast, it's just thinking about dinner. And that's like, they need to have a relationship to work. And it's also for me thinking of like what happens between the scenes that I'm not writing that I want the reader to
Ah,
know.
uh-huh. Oh,
So,
that's a great question. I'm going to write that down. What is happening between the scenes?
like I
That
want the
what?
reader to know that when that couple went to bed with smiles on their faces, and the next morning they're doing something that they talked about that in the morning.
Hmm.
So I think that like creating scene relationships. So that's I mean I find that rough in my first and second drafts, where it's like, what is that scene relationship? I haven't thought about what happens between these two scenes yet. And now that I'm here in draft three, like, I want to convey that these characters had a pleasant evening, and they woke up the next morning resolved to solve the problem. Um, so I don't know. I think I went down in a rabbit hole of like specific things for me, but
No,
yeah,
that's
identifying those.
great. Yeah, that's probably going to be our little teaser. What happens between the scenes that I want the reader to know that you're not writing?
Right. And that's a problem spot for me because I will read a draft and just say, like, this is a bunch of really good scenes that are not in a long-term cohesive feeling together. And so I always have to, like, you know, now go back and figure out, like, all right, how do I make these things harmonize?
I think my challenge usually has to do with character motivation and also relaying that to the reader. Because sometimes, like I'll have ideas about what the character could do that would be interesting. But like, is that really a motivation for the character or is that
Right.
just me putting words on the page,
Right.
So really if I really know what the character's motivation is and it's a driver, it's a doozy of a driver, like they just really want this and they're really motivated to get whatever that they're going to get, then I think that helps drive all the narrative. And if I don't have that, that's where it gets kind of, I don't know, boring, I guess. That's what I have to go back to is like, what's really the motivation here? Or is this just me putting words on the page?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard to like, I think what we have a hard time as writers, what writers can have a hard time doing, ourselves included, is that if the character's motivation is to find love, I mean, it's a very typical one. Like, not every scene is about the motivation is not must find love, must find love, must find love. It's like I've got to get my life together in the service of finding love.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to get my career together because in service of like the mini motivations that serve the bigger motivations are sometimes really hard to parse out. I see that a lot when I'm doing like editorial for things. It's like this flat arc, like this flat line, and not like
Mm.
a series of arcs that goes like this because the motivation is all one thing,
Mm-hmm.
like that story you're talking about. They're going to go find a daughter. Somebody's missing daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not every interaction is let me find the daughter. It's
Right.
like, oh, I've got to find this person who might know about the secret cave where the daughter
Mm-hmm.
might have gone. So like,
And then also the relationships, that are happening. So they all have like little side subplots, kind of. Not really
right,
subplots, but like, you know, the secret that this one has, and how is she going to say what it is? And she doesn't
right,
trust. And then once they're together for long enough, then there is trust. And yeah, so there's all
right.
these little subplots too. So
And that's
yeah,
all in
I like
service
those
of the
mini motivations in service to the bigger motivation. Yeah, that's a
right,
great way to
right.
look at it.
I mean, I just binged through December. I just watched Breaking Bad for like the fifth time, and I think that's the master class in like
Hmm.
the master class in long form story of the big motivation for Walter White is X, like it's to make enough money to pay for his surgery. And while that changes, like all of his little mini motivations throughout, create the rhythm of the story. I mean, if it was just about him making enough money, then the story would just be about transactions and it would have never rose. But like he has to maintain a relationship with his family to keep that goal alive. He has to keep his brother-in-law at bay to keep that dream alive. And so the mini motivations are all serving the big one, but it's like, you know, it's like if it was linear, then you'd just be like, yeah, great, this guy's cooking meth and he's selling it. Great. So,
That's a great way to remember, like when you're writing a series. Um, I don't personally, as a reader, prefer reading series because they
you've said this
feel,
before. You said this in
yeah.
episode 131.
Now
Just kidding.
I don't want to say it. Thanks. But the idea of there
The
having,
tedium of it. Yeah.
yeah, well, just it just seems like the same book over and over and over again. So having that yes, there's an overarching story and an overarching motivation, through the whole series that slowly happens. in each of the books too. So each book having the mini motivation or the mini plot like resolved at the end of the book, but also there's a little bit of movement on the
Yeah.
bigger motivation, the bigger story, and having both of those woven in artfully would make reading series way more interesting, I think.
Because I think most series are written in the service of the series and not necessarily
Mm,
in the service of a book.
mm,
And I'm not just saying that from indie authors that are trying to like build a big
mm-hmm,
platform for themselves. I think there's a lot of it where it's like, how do I keep this thing going?
mm-hmm.
Um, because there's a fear of losing it. Um, and there's a lot, yeah, yeah. Well, that's a whole nother topic. But you're right. You're right. All right. And if you look at like the ones that work, it's usually, I mean, it's in the titles of the Lord of the Rings stories, Fellowship of the Ring. In the interest of saving Middle Earth, we
Mm-hmm,
have to create a fellowship. In the
mm-hmm,
service of saving Middle Earth, we have to take care of the two towers. Then we
mm-hmm.
have to name the last king. It's like it works, the king has to return. Like it's the same storyline, but it's like taking the big steps along the way to get there. Um, yeah, I think that's a massive topic, and I think it's hard for people to talk about because, especially people looking up at people in the 20 books to 50K world, which I'm on book 37 in my series. Well, like I don't know, is book 29 as vital as book 3? I don't know. I don't know. It's a question that certainly needs to be asked.
Maybe you should do a master class on Breaking Bad.
Here's what I want to do. Here's actually what I've thought about doing. It's funny you say that. Um, my family will not allow me to watch Breaking Bad again. My wife came down the stairs when she saw the first episode. It was like late November. She's like, "This again?" I'm like, "Shh." I might have missed
I'm
something the first three times.
studying.
I think what would be an amazing masterclass would be to take something that everybody knows. I always use the Wizard of Oz when I'm talking to a client
Uh-huh.
and they wanted like wait, I'm trying to translate story into something familiar to them. I'll say, no, this is the moment in the Wizard of Oz where,
Hmm.
Toto runs off and it's like this act two. I think it would be great to take something very familiar that's a standalone film and then say, like, let's rewrite this as a series. Let's replot the Wizard of Oz into a 3-book series
Hmm.
about telling the same story. Like, how
Hmm.
would you how would you do it? Because in the Wizard of Oz, it's like the most simple, like, what is Dorothy's motivation?
She wants to get
you
home.
know she
Yeah.
wants to get home, right? So it's very simple, but if you were to do it in 3 movies, the first one would have to be as satisfying. She has to build the fellowship, right? Maybe she
Hmm.
has to get the 3 guys that, of course, it's a story about a woman trying to heal 3 men. um so she's got to get them together, and then it's defeating the Wicked Witch, then it's overcoming the wizard in
At the
Oz.
end.
Like
Yeah.
it would be an interesting exercise to break something down into
I
like
think that would
how
be
to make.
super helpful, especially because there's a lot of people who, and as an editor, I see this a lot, where the book is like 800 pages long, and it's really 2 books, but
Yeah.
so teaching someone, if you don't want to cut this out and make it a 350-page book, which is what sells, then teaching them how to make it into 2 books. I think
Well, I
that would
think
be
there's
a
just
really
some.
cool skill.
Right. Yeah. Well, come see me in September when I'm teaching this somewhere. I don't know. I mean,
Yay!
but I've often thought of like, I mean, really, if you look at like the Lord of the Rings and Wizard of Oz, like you could have done the Lord of the Rings in a single movie and it would have looked like, or a single book or story and it would have looked
Hmm.
like this. Or now that it's three, you had to do three this way. So
I
like,
guess he
let's
did The
do that way.
Hobbit, that kind of is the
That's the teaser. That's like I walked into the bar and somebody offered me an appetizer before I got to the bar early. That's the Hobbit, and like that's the reward of it.
It's so
Um,
funny. I don't know who I will alienate by saying I've always liked The Hobbit and I never could get into the Lord of the Rings series.
I
I don't know if it's a
love the
series
Hobbit,
thing or what, but I love The
but I
Hobbit.
don't love reading the Lord of the Rings. I'll tell my Hobbit story before we close.
Okay.
I in high school we had to read a book every like month or something, and then report about it in humanities. And I read American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis, and it was like it's a distressing book. It is really horrifying. Um, and my humanities teacher, Mrs. Irish, who passed away in 2022, um, said, I told her like this book was so distressing. I came to her during like office hour. I'm like, I can't believe it. She's like, "Oh, Eric, go read The Hobbit. Go read The Hobbit. Cleanse yourself. Read The Hobbit." So I went like immediately home and I read The Hobbit that weekend. I'm like, I feel so much better. I feel so much better. You are my emotional support book, Hobbit.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
Miss Irish. Miss
Oh,
Irish.
well, awesome.
We've covered a lot.
Yeah, I think all of those tips were great. This was a great craft episode. I'm really happy with it.
And if people start emailing and saying they want to see that course, I will do it because
I
now
want to
I'm
see
sitting
that
here,
course. I'll come
I'm
to
writing it
that.
in my
I'll
head like,
drive
oh,
to
this is,
Oregon City for that course.
or maybe in Eugene, maybe I'll pitch word crafters on it, or maybe I'll do it in
Yeah,
Alaska or do it in, something like that. I don't know.
nice. I don't
We'll
know if
see.
I could follow you to Alaska to see it, but maybe you could videotape it. Wow,
Southwest
that's dating.
Washington.
Yeah, there we go. That one.
We'll do it in Southwest Washington.
Yeah, I got an email trying to accept pitching, and I'm like, oh, shoot, is it that time again? What can I pitch?
It's that time. I sent them my pitch.
Oh, I'll have to do that then soon. All right. Well, thanks for talking with me about this.
Absolutely.
Um, more on the next date later. Like I'm going to Costa Rica next week, so I'm not sure like if there'll be an episode next week, but we will have another one in
Folks, we'll
this
figure it
month.
out.
Yeah,
We're
we'll
gonna
figure it
figure it
out.
out.
Might be a solo show here and there, but anyway,
Yeah.
don't forget you can go to magicmind.com/Valerie Jan, VALERIEJAN for January, and get 45% off that Magic Mind bundle with that link. And we will see you next time. Bye for
See ya.
now.
Bye bye.